With this video, we're going to dig a little deeper into some of the other functions on the fixed asset register. I'm going to help you make some sense out of this. Asset class is where we were able to set up all of the different classes of equipment that we have. As another way of splitting them up, we use the asset code prefix, V for vehicle and E for equipment and B for building and so forth, as one way to keep things straight. And then we have, especially in version 6, gone to these asset classes which talk about the depreciation life. The standard setup we use here is what was in the accounting manual, but you would then have to customize it for your location based on the tax laws and the government rules where you happen to be. Those were set up at the very beginning of our fixed asset world, and then we used asset class and they fed into our asset records, and then we went over here to depreciation calculation, then we went to asset disposal. I intentionally did it that way. I hope it's good education. I'm not sure. Just to keep it simple. That is, if you understood what you've seen so far, you could probably stumble through the rest of your Sun Plus life without knowing what we're covering in today's video. But some of the things we're going to do in the video today is look at a few others of these that enhance the process we've already described. Some of these are just way off the wall, and we're going to actually have a video that covers the ones that are off the wall, but some of them are legitimate helps to the standard Sun Plus process. You might not ever use them, but they can make your life better. So let's just take a look at some of them. First, these are all really beyond the scope of normal Sun Plus life, so we won't look at any of those today. We can do an asset inquiry, which is maybe useful to you. Let's look at our example asset of E0021. Okay, you can see we get all the information of what's going on with that asset. That's sort of nice. There's not anything that I know of that you can actually do over here, but it just helps you look at the asset and what's going on with it. That was quicker than building a Q&A query. It is pretty sharp, so it just helps you take a peek at a certain asset and its standing. The asset inquiry just gives you the details about a certain asset. An asset status report is also very helpful. You can filter through from A to ZZZ from the asset code. You can do a little bit of filtering. It's just going to give you a report that shows you problems with your fixed assets. So let me just show you the types of problems it covers. So let's just go up to our help, Sun Plus help, and the asset report will tell you the assets that have information missing, such as the start period for depreciation, which has a net value which is less than the final value. Remember, you have the opportunity to stop depreciation at a residual value. Remember learning that back in college. You don't have to depreciate it all the way down to zero every time. Sun Plus world and church, we usually just depreciate it to zero, but you can set a residual value, and if for somehow or another depreciation goes below that residual value, this report would point it out. Assets that are expected to be fully depreciated, but they're not. So if your time parameters say it should be depreciated, but it's not been depreciated, it would show up in the report. It will show you the ones that are marked as suspended, and it shows you the ones marked for disposal. So it's just sort of a report to help you see the ones that are troubled. You might find that helpful. So that helps you understand your fixed assets a little bit better. Asset disposal selection. Now in the disposal video, I had you come over here to the fixed asset record. We went to a record and we chose the ones that we wanted to dispose of. And in a practical, most of our small organizations, that's the way it needs to be done. You just go to the asset, mark it ready for disposal, then you go back over to the asset disposal and it disposes all the ones that were marked. But if you wanted to mark a bunch for disposal quickly, you can use this function. So instead of going over here to each of the assets one after another, you might want to dispose of a bunch at one time. You could have assets of a certain class that you want to get rid of, a whole range of them that you want to mark to dispose, or a certain asset code that you want to do, or a certain dimension. It just isn't that practical to use that this much but you could. And in some people, I actually know some folks that are running this for just one asset code. They just put in E0021 to E0021 and run it. And then they'll go to the next one they want to dispose. They just find that is handier. What this does, when you process the ones that you selected, if you then go to that asset record, you'd see it's ready for disposal. So it's just a quick way or an alternative way to mark them. Instead of going one by one here to mark it for disposal, you can do them in mass. What is handy is asset part disposal, and we didn't make that really clear, but when you book an asset, let me just open up the asset that we've already had. When you book an asset like this, when we wrote the journal entry, we marked the quantity, and most of the time your quantity will be 1. But let's suppose you bought 100 folding chairs. Instead of setting up each of those folding chairs individually, you set them up as a group purchase of 100 chairs. When you buy the asset and when you book it in the ledger entry, you have to mark the quantity of the assets that you bought. After a few years, 50 of those folding chairs have been lost, and you want to get rid of 50 of them off of your books. So you come over here and you'd pick the folding chairs asset code and the quantity that is there, and then here you mark the amount that you want to dispose of, and it will take the portion of the book value of the chairs that you've disposed of and stick that book value down here, if that makes any sense. It is a way to dispose of some of an asset that has many items in the asset quantity. I hope that's a little bit clear. It's actually very intuitive. Once you get to the process of buying a bunch of chairs and recording them, disposing of a bunch of chairs is just a continuation of that logic. Those are 4 additional features that will help you do your work. We looked at asset inquiry, which is a listing about an asset status report that shows you problems with your fixed asset. It shows you another way to pick your assets for disposal, and a way to dispose of parts of an asset when an asset is composed of many similar parts like folding chairs. I hope that you stay tuned, and in the next video I will explain what the rest of these things are for, at least so you know what's going on.